The kiss that saves. When the past won't stay dead. What if the one person you could never be brought you back to life? She had sworn. 5 years ago, on a cold concrete floor, cradling her dying father in her arms, Jody Russo had made herself a promise in blood and tears. Never again. Never the Mafia. Never the violence. Never the kind of love that gets people killed. She changed her name. She poured drinks for strangers. She became invisible on purpose. And then, on an ordinary February night, she saw the rifle reflection in a window across the street, and the man it was aimed at. She had 3 seconds. 3 seconds to decide if the past was truly dead, or if it had been waiting for her all along. Stay with me, because what happened in those 3 seconds will change everything. My name is Jody Russo. Or at least, it used to be. The woman I am now goes by a different name, works a double shift at a bar on 5th and never stays anywhere long enough to get comfortable. But the woman I was. She was the daughter of Anthony Russo, the most brilliant strategist the East Coast underworld had ever known. He taught me to read a room the way most fathers teach daughters to ride a bike. He taught me that survival was a language, and that danger had a grammar you could learn. I loved him more than anything in the world. And I watched him die in my arms at 23 years old, cut down by a stray bullet in someone else's war. That was the night I decided I was done. Done with the life. Done with the power. Done with men who kept guns where their hearts should be. 5 years of bartending. 5 years of normal. 5 years of almost forgetting who I really was. Almost. Red heart. Clapperboard. The story begins. It was a Tuesday, which tells you how unremarkable the night was supposed to be. Jamie and I were splitting a slow shift at Carver's, the little bar on 5th with the sticky stools and the good bourbon. I was wiping down glasses and not thinking about anything at all, which is exactly how I like my evenings. That's when the window caught the light wrong. It was the building across the street. 3rd floor, left window. A fraction of a second flash, silver in the dark. The kind of thing most people would blink past and forget. I didn't blink. My stomach dropped before my brain even finished processing what I'd seen. Because I knew that gleam. My father had shown me that gleam on a summer afternoon when I was 15, standing on a rooftop with binoculars, learning the difference between glass and scope. That was a rifle. And it was pointed directly at the Italian restaurant across the street. Specifically at the man sitting at the window table as if he owned the world and had never once considered that someone might want to take it from him. Hector Ritchie. I knew the name the way you know a storm warning. Hector Ritchie, 42 years old, untouchable, the most powerful mafia boss on the eastern seaboard. The kind of man my father used to speak about in careful, measured tones, the kind of careful that meant respect. He was sitting with 2 associates in a restaurant that cost more per entree than my weekly paycheck, wearing a suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent, discussing something that made the men across from him look like they were holding back fear with both hands. And he had about 8 seconds left to live. My mind did the calculation before I could stop it, the old machinery clicking into life like a clock that had never actually stopped ticking. Professional shooter. 3rd floor, across a 4-lane street. Wind minimal. Angle direct. He had a clean shot through the window. Screaming would do nothing. Police couldn't arrive in time. Panic would scatter the crowd and give the shooter exactly the chaos he needed to disappear. There was one option. Only one. And it was completely insane. Jamie, cover for me. My voice came out steady. Too steady for someone who was about to cross the street and walk into a Mafia meeting. I was already moving, already rounding the bar, already pushing through the door into the cold February night. The air hit my face like a slap. My sneakers hit the asphalt in a quick, sure rhythm and I kept my chin up and my expression calm the way my father taught me. Because fear is a scent, and dangerous men can smell it. The restaurant's maître d' moved toward me with a polished smile that said you don't have a reservation and you don't belong here. I walked straight past him. 3 tables. 20 feet. 8 seconds. No, less now, maybe 5. Hector's associates noticed me first, the way dangerous men always notice what doesn't belong. But it was Hector himself who really looked at me, dark eyes sweeping from head to toe in the space of a heartbeat, absorbing and cataloguing in a way that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't been in years. Can I help you? The question was polite. The edge underneath it was not. 2 seconds. I leaned over the table, braced one hand on the cold marble, brought my face dangerously close to his, and whispered the only 2 words that mattered. Trust me. And then I kissed him. I pressed my mouth against his with enough force to be convincing, turning my body so I completely blocked the window, so that all the shooter in the building across the street saw was a woman, where the target used to be. Hector went rigid for 1/2 second. And then, he didn't push me away. Didn't signal his guards. Didn't do anything except go perfectly, dangerously still and let me do what I needed to do. I tasted whiskey and danger on his lips and counted the 3 longest seconds of my life. Across the street, in the 3rd-floor window, the shooter, a woman named Jane Volkoff, adjusted her aim. Muttered a curse. Waited 2 more seconds. The woman didn't move. No clean shot. Abort. She disassembled the rifle and disappeared into the dark. When I finally pulled away, my heart was hammering so loud I was sure the entire restaurant could hear it. Hector's dark eyes held confusion, and something more dangerous underneath, something that looked like dangerous, undeniable curiosity. How did you know? I swallowed hard. Training. I said. Just that one word. And I watched the exact moment his mind caught it and began pulling it apart. Red heart. Clapperboard, the escape. We were in his car within 4 minutes. Black, gleaming, probably armored enough to survive a missile strike. Logan, broad-shouldered, scarred, watching me in the rearview mirror with professional suspicion, drove in silence while Hector turned in the back seat and looked at me the way a man looks at something he can't quite classify. Who are you? Jody Russo, I said. And it was strange and a little dangerous, to say my real name out loud to someone from this world after 5 years of burying it. The silence after I mentioned my father's name was so complete that Logan nearly clipped the curb. Anthony Russo's daughter. Hector said finally, and it wasn't a question. Something shifted in his eyes, something I couldn't quite name. I told him everything. My father's death. The promise I'd made. The 5 years of bartending and pretending. Why did you save me? There was a vulnerability in that question that didn't belong on the face of a man like Hector Ritchie. It caught me completely off guard. Because letting you die would have started a war, I said honestly. And innocent people would have died in the crossfire. My father taught me that information is power, and that saving the right life can change everything. Hector was quiet for a long moment. You're incredible, he said, and the reverence in those words did something uncomfortable to my chest. I'm a bartender, I said firmly. Lie, he said, just as firmly. And then he reached out and took my chin between his fingers, not roughly, surprisingly gently, and turned my face to meet his. You never stopped being what your father made you. The training is in your blood, Jody Russo. And you know it. He was right. And I hated him a little for saying it out loud. Whoever tried to kill Hector would eventually learn that I had interfered. When that happened, I'd become a target too. We both knew it. And so, with his hand still warm around my wrist, and the city lights fading behind us as we drove toward the wealthy suburbs, I said the word that changed everything. Okay. Red heart. Do you think Jody can really keep her distance from this world, or is it already too late? Tell me in the comments below. And if you want to know what happens next. Mansion and short pajamas. The walls we build, and what lives inside them. They say the most dangerous place in the world isn't a battlefield. It's a quiet house, at 2 in the morning, with a man who looks at you like you're the only unsolved mystery he's ever wanted to understand. Jody Russo had survived gunfire, grief, and 5 years of reinventing herself from the ground up. But no one, not her father, not her training, not the years of carefully building walls, had prepared her for Hector Ritchie's guest room. Red heart. Clapperboard, arrival at the mansion. Hector Ritchie's mansion was exactly what you'd expect from a man who had built an empire from nothing and spent decades making sure no one could take it from him. Dark stone. Iron gates. Windows that probably cost more than most entire homes. When we passed through those gates, I felt something tighten in my chest, that old, familiar feeling of a world closing around me. Logan parked in a garage built for 10 vehicles, all of them expensive, all of them immaculate. Hector opened my door and offered his hand, and I only hesitated a moment before taking it. Not because I was scared, but because I wasn't, and that was somehow worse. Guest room is on the 2nd floor. I'll send someone to get your things. I can get my own things, I said. He stopped walking, turned, looked at me with an expression that said this was not actually a discussion. Whoever tried to kill me might be watching your apartment. I'm not going to risk your safety because of pride. He stepped closer. His voice dropped. Give me the address, Jody. Please. The word please from a man like Hector Ritchie sounded like a foreign language, careful and unpracticed, like something he almost never said. It disarmed me more than any argument could have. I handed over the keys. Our fingers touched briefly and I felt that same strange warmth run up my arm that I'd felt in the restaurant. The first time we'd touched, the first time I'd had any reason to notice him as anything other than a target to protect. The guest room was absurdly beautiful. A king-size bed that looked more comfortable than anything I'd slept on in 5 years. A private bathroom with a bathtub built for 3. Artwork on the walls that probably had names I'd recognize. Hector showed me around with quiet, efficient hospitality and then paused at the door. If you need anything, my room is at the end of the hall. And Jody, thank you for what you did tonight. You're exceptional. He left before I could answer. I stood in the middle of a stranger's luxury guest room with my heart beating too fast and tried very hard not to think about what exceptional meant when a man like him said it. Red heart. Clapperboard. The conversation she couldn't stop having with herself. I soaked in the giant tub for an hour and told myself it was just the adrenaline. That was why my hands were still shaking slightly. That was why I kept seeing his eyes in the steam. Adrenaline. Perfectly normal. Nothing to do with him. My clothes arrived, brought by a silent man who didn't make eye contact, and I changed into my usual pajamas. Cotton shorts, thin tank top, the kind of thing I wore alone in my apartment where no one could see me. I forgot that this wasn't my apartment. By 2 a.m., sleep had refused to come. My mind kept replaying the kiss, the one I'd initiated as a tactical maneuver and which had, somewhere in the space of 3 seconds, stopped feeling purely tactical. The way he'd gone still instead of pulling away. The warmth of his mouth. The quiet, calculated intelligence behind his eyes when I'd finally pulled back. I gave up on sleep and went to get water. Red heart. Clapperboard. 2 a.m. in the kitchen. The kitchen was the size of my entire apartment. Marble counters, stainless steel everything, the kind of quiet that expensive houses have, not peaceful, exactly, just very controlled. I opened the refrigerator and let the cold air wash over me, shivering a little. My loose hair fell over my shoulders. The chill raised goosebumps on my skin and made it abundantly, uncomfortably clear that my tank top was offering very little in the way of cover. I did not expect anyone to be awake. Can't sleep. His voice came from behind me, low, rough at the edges, the way voices get at 2 a.m. I turned fast. The water bottle almost slipped. Hector Ritchie was standing in the kitchen doorway in grey sweatpants that hung low on his hips and absolutely nothing else. I have faced men with weapons. I have talked my way out of situations that should have ended badly. I am my father's daughter, trained since 15 to stay calm under pressure. I was not calm. He was, there's no other word for it, beautiful in the way that dangerous things sometimes are. Defined and scarred and very, very still, watching me with those dark eyes that never seemed to miss anything. His gaze traveled down my body slowly, deliberately, and when it returned to my face, something had shifted in his expression, something carefully controlled, and failing. Sorry, I said in a rush, I'm moving uselessly to cover myself. I didn't know you were awake, I just wanted water, I didn't expect. He started walking toward me. Slow, controlled steps, each one closing the distance between us in a way that made the air in the kitchen feel thicker. It's okay. The house is yours too, he said. But his voice had gone rougher, and I could see the effort it cost him to keep his eyes on my face. That pajama is small. The observation was not a complaint. The way he said it was very clearly not a complaint. I sleep like this normally. I managed. Didn't expect an audience at 2 a.m. He took another step. He was close enough now that I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin, and he wasn't even touching me. Well, now you have one. His eyes moved over me again, unhidden this time. No pretense. I'm trying very hard to be respectful here, Jodie. But you're making it incredibly difficult. My breath came out in a broken sigh that I immediately wished I could take back, because his eyes narrowed slightly when he heard it, like a man who had just confirmed something he'd only suspected. I should have stepped back. Should have put the marble island between us. Should have said good night and meant it. I said his name instead. Just his name, in a voice that came out much quieter than I intended. Hector. He reached out, touched my chin, that same gesture from the car, fingers gentle and certain, and tilted my face up. You saved me tonight. Kissed me in front of everyone. Now you're in my house at 2 a.m. in pajamas that barely cover you. His thumb moved across my pulse point. So light. So impossibly not light. Are you testing me, Jodie? Because I have limits. And you're pushing all of them at the same time. I opened my mouth. It was an accident. Was it? He said it so quietly. And the answer, the honest answer, sat in my throat like something I couldn't swallow. He pulled back. One step. It looked like it cost him. Go back to your room, Jodie. Before I forget you're my guest and do something neither of us is ready for. I went. I made it to the hallway, up the stairs, almost to the door of the guest room before I heard it, muffled, low, from the kitchen below. A groan. And then his voice, very quietly, talking to no one. She's going to kill me. I closed the bedroom door and leaned against it and pressed my palm flat against my chest where my heart was doing things hearts are not supposed to do for men like Hector Ritchie. 5 years. 5 years of walls. 5 years of normal. And one night had undone all of it. Red heart. Clapperboard. What Jodie realizes. I lay in the dark and tried to be honest with myself for the first time in a long time. My father had trained me to be clear-eyed. To see situations as they were, not as I wished them to be. And the situation, seen clearly, was this. I was in the mansion of the most powerful criminal on the East Coast. Someone was trying to kill him. I had made myself a target by saving him. And instead of being afraid, instead of planning my exit, I was lying in a luxury bed thinking about the way his thumb had felt on my pulse. You never stopped being what your father made you, Jodie. The training is in your blood. He had said that in the car, and I had wanted to argue. But the truth was uglier and simpler. It wasn't just the training. It was this. The pull of it. The aliveness of it. The way the world had sharpened into something vivid and real the moment I'd seen that rifle reflection. The way I'd felt more like myself in those 3 seconds of crisis than I had in 5 years of bartending. I hated knowing that. I hated that Hector Ritchie, who I had known for less than 6 hours, had already seen it. 2 people who should stay apart. 1 mansion with too many quiet hallways. And a threat still out there, getting closer. What happens when the danger stops being outside the walls, and starts coming from within? The war outside, the world within. What you fight for reveals what you love. Red heart. Some people spend their whole lives running from who they are. And some people, if they're lucky, if they're brave enough, finally meet someone worth stopping for. Jodie Russo had built her new life on one truth. The Mafia had taken her father. She would not give it anything else. But the problem with promises made in grief is that they don't account for the moment you look across a kitchen counter at a dangerous man eating a sandwich at 7 a.m. and feel something that isn't fear at all. Red heart. Clapperboard. The morning after. I woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee and the sound of low voices somewhere beneath me, and for one disoriented moment I didn't know where I was. Then I remembered. All of it. The rifle. The restaurant. The kiss. The kitchen. The way he had looked at me like I was both a puzzle and an answer. I got dressed carefully this time, jeans, a real shirt, and followed the coffee smell downstairs. Hector was at the kitchen table with Logan and another man I didn't recognize. 3 cups of espresso and a spread of documents between them that they tried, not very subtly, to cover when I walked in. Hector looked up. Something moved through his eyes, brief and controlled, and then he gestured at the coffee maker with a calm that I recognized as performance. "There's coffee. Eggs if you want them. Sit down, Jody. You should hear this." Logan's eyebrows went up. Hector ignored him. Saturday. The shooter, Jane Volkoff, had been identified through footage from a camera across from the restaurant. She was freelance. High-end. She had been hired by Lindsay Marone, the name I'd heard Hector's associates mention the night before. "Lindsay is pushing into Southern Territory," Logan said, watching me carefully. "Last night was meant to look like an inside job. Destabilize leadership. Start a succession war." I nodded slowly, processing. "And the person who interfered with the shot?" The third man said, looking at me in a way that was just barely polite. "She's a liability until Marone is handled. She's sitting right here," I said pleasantly. "And she's right about the liability part, which is why she'd like to be involved in handling it." Silence. Logan looked at Hector. Hector was already looking at me with something on his face that might have been pride, if powerful mafia bosses felt pride about civilian women who interrupted assassination attempts. "Told you she was exceptional," Hector said quietly, to no one in particular. "Red heart. Clapperboard, the plan, and what it costs." Marone's organization had 3 weak points, and I spotted 2 of them in under 20 minutes of looking at the documents they eventually stopped pretending to hide. The third took another hour, a conversation with Hector where we sat across from each other at the kitchen table and talked strategy the way I hadn't talked to anyone in 5 years, and I realized somewhere in the middle of it that I was happy. Not content. Not safe. Happy. Alive in the way I'd forgotten I could be. It terrified me. Hector noticed. He noticed everything. "You're good at this," he said when we had a moment alone. Logan had gone to make calls, the third man dispatched with instructions. "My father's daughter," I said, which was easier than the truth. Hector leaned forward. Elbows on the table, eyes on mine, that focused attention that made the rest of the room stop existing. "Can I ask you something?" "You're going to anyway." A faint smile. "True." He paused. "Do you miss it? The life?" I looked at my hands. Thought about lying. Decided not to. "Yes," I said. "Not the violence. Not the danger. But the clarity of it. When it matters, you know it matters. Every second counts. You feel it in your body, you know." "I know," he said softly. And the way he said it made me look up. "My father brought me into this life at 14. I've never known anything else. And I've spent a long time wondering if that makes me incapable of anything else." The honesty of it hit me sideways. Men like Hector Ritchie didn't say things like that. They didn't have to. "I think some people are built for intensity," I said carefully. "I think walking away from it doesn't make it stop being part of you. It just makes you quiet about it." He looked at me for a long moment. Quiet, but not gone. Quiet, but not gone. A beat. Something settling between us like an understanding. Careful, significant, impossible to know. "Jody, I need you to know something." I waited. Last night wasn't just me being grateful. I know what grateful looks like, and that's not what this is. I don't. He stopped. Ran a hand through his hair, the only nervous gesture I'd ever seen him make. "I don't know what to do with you. That's not something I say. About anything." My heart was doing the thing again. The hammering, inconvenient, ill-advised thing. "You don't have to do anything with me," I said, trying to be reasonable. "When Marone is handled, I go back to my apartment and my bar and my normal life. Is that what you want?" The question was quiet. Direct. There was no place to hide in it. I didn't answer. Because the honest answer was no, and I wasn't ready to hand that to him yet. Red heart. Clapperboard, the resolution, Marone falls. The operation took 4 days. Hector's people acted on the intelligence we'd assembled together, and I stayed in the mansion and tried not to notice how quickly it had started feeling like somewhere I could breathe. On the fourth night, Logan came in with a report that he read to Hector in a tone of quiet satisfaction. Marone's network had been dismantled. The contracts, including the one on Hector, had been dissolved. Jane Volkorf had taken a very well-paid voluntary retirement from the profession, which in this world meant she was not coming back. The threat was over. I stood in the doorway of the room where they were talking and felt something strange, the absence of danger, and beneath it, something I hadn't expected. Disappointment. Not about the danger being gone. About what that meant for me. Red heart. Clapperboard. The goodbye that isn't. I packed my things that evening. The same bag that had arrived from my apartment 4 days ago. Same clothes. Same everything. Hector found me in the hallway. He didn't say anything at first. Just looked at the bag. Then at me. So. I confirmed. The threat's handled. You don't have to stay. I know. A long pause. The mansion was very quiet around us. But you could. 2 words. Said like a man who doesn't say things like that. Like it cost him something real to say it. I looked at him, really looked at him, the way my father taught me to look at people when you need to see the truth of them. Past the control, past the danger, past the expensive suit and the power that moved around him like weather. I saw a man who was lonely in the particular way that very powerful people get lonely, surrounded by people who feared him, trusted by almost no one, respected by everyone, known by no one. And I thought about my apartment. My bar. My safe, quiet, carefully built life. The one that had kept me alive and kept me numb in almost equal measure. You never stopped being what your father made you. The training is in your blood. He'd been right. But he'd only seen half of it. The other half was this: I was my father's daughter, yes. But my father had also believed, with everything he had, that the right life was worth fighting for. Not the safe life. Not the quiet life. The right one.
I CT Baydown.
Hector's expression didn't change. But something in his eyes did. I have conditions. I said. Name them. I'm not your property. I'm not your employee. I'm not your kept woman. If I stay, it's because we're equals. Done. And if you lie to me, I won't. You don't even know what I was going to say. Doesn't matter. I won't lie to you, Jody. I'm very good at a lot of things. But I've been doing this long enough to know that some things are worth more than strategy. He took 1 step toward me. Then another. Then his hands came up and framed my face, not the chin-tipping gesture from before, not the controlling touch I might have expected. Just his palms, careful against my jaw, like I was something that could break. Like I was something worth being careful with. Stay. He said. Not because you have to. Not because it's strategic. Because. He stopped. The words seemed to resist him. Because I don't want to go back to a world where you don't exist in it. 5 years. 5 years of walls. 5 years of telling myself that the life I'd left was all danger and no grace. I had been half right. It was dangerous. But standing here, with this man's hands gentle on my face, I understood something my father had tried to tell me once, at the end, when he thought I wasn't paying attention. The danger isn't the problem. Running from everything, that's the problem. I reached up and covered his hands with mine. Okay. I said. For the second time since I'd met him. And just like the first time, the word felt like the beginning of something I couldn't quite see the end of. This time, I wasn't afraid of that. He kissed me, not the emergency kiss from the restaurant, not the tactical maneuver that had started all of this, but the real thing, quiet and certain and warm, like an answer to a question we'd both been asking since the moment I'd walked into his life with 3 seconds and one insane idea. Outside, the city moved and breathed and forgot, the way cities do. Inside, Hector Ritchie, the most powerful man on the East Coast, held a woman who had once tried to disappear, and found out that she had walked back into exactly the life she was meant for. Just not the one she'd expected. Red heart. And that, my loves, is where their story truly begins. Jody Russo walked away from the Mafia at 23 because grief told her to. She walked back into it at 28 because something stronger than grief told her to. And Hector Ritchie, who had spent decades being feared and never known, finally met someone who looked at him and saw a person, not a power. That is not a small thing. That is everything. If this story moved you, if you felt something in your chest during the kitchen scene, or the goodbye that wasn't, or that final kiss, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, which moment hit you hardest? And if you believe that the right person can bring you back to yourself, even when you thought you were gone, share this with someone who needs to hear it today. If you're new here, welcome. This channel is where we tell stories about love that costs something, and means everything. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Hit the bell. Leave a comment. You are exactly the kind of person we make these stories for. I'll see you in the next one. With love, Lena. Red Heart. Sparkle's life lesson from this story sparkles. Red Heart. You cannot outrun who you are. Jody spent 5 years trying to become someone smaller, someone safer, someone the world couldn't hurt. And the world waited patiently until the night she saw a rifle reflection in a window, and every part of herself she tried to bury came roaring back to life in 3 seconds. The things we run from aren't always the things that will destroy us. Sometimes we run from the very things we were built for, the intensity, the purpose, the people who see us clearly and don't look away. Sometimes the life we think is keeping us safe is actually keeping us small. Real love doesn't ask you to disappear. It asks you to arrive. Hector didn't want a woman who would become quieter and smaller around him. He wanted the woman who had walked into a Mafia restaurant with 3 seconds and one insane plan and saved his life without being asked. He wanted all of her. Exactly as she was. The bravest thing is not to leave. Sometimes, the bravest thing is to stay. Jody Russo had been brave enough to walk away from a dangerous life. But it took a different kind of courage, a rarer kind, to put the bag down and say, I'm not done. I'm not running anymore. This, here, with you, this is worth fighting for. Run toward the life that makes you feel alive. Not the safe one. The right one. Red Heart.